The wedding reception opens in a haze of glittering lights, champagne toasts, and the manufactured joy of a perfect celebration. Haley, dressed in a gown that seems almost too heavy for her frame, floats through the crowd with a practiced smile. Guests murmur about her beauty, the success of the groom, the bright future that lies ahead. Yet beneath the veil of music and laughter, her eyes betray her. Flickers of unease shadow her every glance. Then she sees him. Across the crowded ballroom, framed by the gilded chandeliers and curious eyes, stands Ethan, her estranged older brother. He shouldn't be there. He wasn't invited, and she never expected him to come, not after years of silence. Not after the betrayal that splintered their family into shards that never quite fit together again. His presence feels like a ghost is stepping into flesh, dragging the past into the carefully staged present. Her hand trembles as she tightens her grip on her bouquet, her chest tightening in a way no vows or rings could explain. Around her, no one notices. To them, she is radiant, glowing, fulfilled. But in her eyes, the mirror of her truest self, something cracks. Ethan's gaze locks on hers with a weight that words cannot yet carry. And in that single collision of eyes, the past roars back louder than the music. To understand the depth of this moment, one must unravel the years of silence that hang like a storm cloud between them. Their father's betrayal wasn't just a scandal. It was a fracture that dismantled the very idea of family. When the truth of his double life surfaced, the family home became a battlefield. Every whispered conversation, every slammed door, every bitter word, a reminder of how trust once broken can never fully heal. Haley was still clinging to the fragments of stability, desperate to hold her mother together, desperate to salvage what little dignity remained. Ethan, older, angrier, and perhaps more honest, walked away. To Haley, his leaving was abandonment, the wound deeper than their father's lies. In her eyes, he chose freedom over family, escape over responsibility. Years passed in silence, the absence of his voice becoming a constant ache she learned to live with. And now, in the middle of the most important day of her life, he returns uninvited, standing like a shadow at the edge of her carefully constructed world. His arrival isn't just a surprise. It's a rupture, threatening to undo the fragile scaffolding she built to move forward. It forces her to confront not only the man who left, but the truth of everything she has tried to bury, beneath white lace and wedding vows. Then comes the moment that transforms unease into devastation. Amid the clinking glasses and polite laughter, Ethan approaches her with the quiet authority of someone who doesn't need to raise his voice to be heard. Leaning in close, with eyes that burn with something between anger and sorrow, he delivers the words that slice deeper than any public scandal could. You're marrying him to escape, not because you love him. The sentence lands like a thunderclap in her chest. For all the carefully chosen flowers, the pristine venue, the smiling photographs, Ethan names the one truth she's feared to admit, even to herself. His words strip her bare, exposing the hollowness beneath the spectacle. It isn't her father's infidelity replaying, nor the years of absence. It's Ethan holding up a mirror she cannot turn away from. Her face crumbles, her heart pounding as though the music has turned into a war drum. The weight of the dress, the eyes of the guests, the burden of pretending, it becomes unbearable. Without thinking, Haley flees. The satin hem of her gown dragging through the rain-soaked night, her pristine image dissolving into mud and tears. Yet even as she runs, she hears footsteps behind his. Ethan follows, not as a guest intruding on a wedding, but as a brother who has returned at the most inconvenient, catastrophic, yet necessary moment. The storm outside mirrors the storm within, and as the rain lashes against them, the wedding is no longer a celebration. It has become the battlefield where old wounds reopen, and the true story begins. On the surface, Haley's life appears enviable, almost storybook perfect. Daniel, her fiancé, is a man of wealth, influence, and impeccable charm when the world is watching. With him, she is draped in designer clothes, whisked to elegant dinners, and admired as the woman who seemingly has it all. Friends envy her ring, her lifestyle, her promise of stability. Yet beneath this curated facade lies a woman suffocating under invisible chains. Daniel's charm hides a controlling nature, one that measures her worth in obedience and appearances. Every smile she wears is rehearsed, every word carefully filtered to avoid his subtle corrections. He doesn't yell or strike, his power is quieter, more insidious. The way he comments on her tone, the way he makes her question her own decisions, the way he insists he knows what's best. For Hayley, trauma has become second nature. She has learned how to survive by burying her loneliness beneath perfection, convincing herself that safety and reputation are enough to outweigh the hollow ache of unlived love. Yet as she prepares to marry Daniel, her body betrays her with restless nights, trembling hands, and a gnawing truth she cannot silence. This marriage is not a beginning, but a cage disguised as a crown. Ethan's story runs in stark contrast to Hayley's carefully maintained world. Years ago, when their father's infidelity shattered the family, he chose the path of exile rather than complicity. Their father had begged him to protect the image of respectability, to keep the lies buried, but Ethan refused. His honesty cost him not only his relationship with his father, but with Hayley as well, who saw his departure as abandonment. He left the family home carrying not just bitterness, but also the unspoken guilt of leaving his younger sister behind. Distance hardened him. Survival away from family required building walls so high, they often kept even love at bay. He learned to carry himself with a coldness that protected him from being wounded again. But beneath that steel exterior lingers an unbreakable thread, his fierce protectiveness of Hayley. For all the silence and distance, he never stopped thinking of her. When he learns of her engagement to Daniel, he doesn't just see a wedding announcement, he sees history repeating itself. A mirror image of the manipulation and control their father once exerted over their mother. His return isn't about reconciliation alone. It's a desperate attempt to stop the cycle from consuming his sister the way it consumed their mother. The shadow of their family history still lingers like smoke that refuses to clear. Their mother, once vibrant and outspoken, retreated into a life of silence after the betrayal. She chose survival over confrontation, turning a blind eye to her husband's double life, teaching Hayley by example that endurance is safer than rebellion. Hayley, still young and longing for stability, absorbed this pattern, becoming the dutiful daughter who smoothed over cracks, smiled through pain, and held everything together while everything was falling apart. Ethan, by contrast, rejected that survival strategy, walking away when silence felt like complicity. The two siblings, shaped by the same trauma, made opposite choices. Hayley stayed trapped in the toxic cycle. Ethan fled it. Now, years later, the stakes are painfully clear. Hayley's marriage to Daniel is not about love. It is a performance, a transaction, a shield against vulnerability. Daniel's subtle control is the echo of their father's dominance, his protection just another word for possession. Ethan, seeing this, cannot ignore the truth. To him, stepping back into Hayley's life is not just about confronting the past, it's about saving her from a future that looks too much like their mother's quiet despair. But in doing so, he risks reopening the wounds of betrayal, anger, and abandonment that have defined their fractured bond for years. The wedding is no longer just a ceremony. It becomes the battlefield where survival, truth, and the possibility of freedom will be fought for. The rain lashes against Hayley's gown, soaking the silk until it clings like a second skin. Her breath is ragged as she clutches at her skirts, the sound of her heart louder than the storm. She doesn't get far before Daniel finds her, his polished shoes splashing mud in his pursuit. His voice, once smooth and charming, now slices through the night with cold authority. "What on earth are you doing?" he snaps, grabbing her wrist hard enough to sting. The mask he wore for the guests has slipped entirely. Gone is the doting fiancé, replaced by the calculating man who thrives on control. He belittles her for making a spectacle, chastises her for embarrassing him in front of people who matter. When Ethan steps into view, Daniel sneers, his words venom-laced. Of course. The parasite returns, feeding on pity as always. The insult isn't aimed only at Ethan, it's aimed at Haley too. A way of reminding her where her loyalty should lie. His grip tightens as if to prove his ownership, his voice dropping into the cruel rhythm she knows too well. Daniel doesn't just want obedience. He demands it. In that rain-soaked moment, Haley sees clearly what she has tried to deny. The man she is about to marry is not her savior, but her captor. Ethan closes the distance between them, his presence a storm of its own. His voice isn't raised, but it carries the weight of truth in a way Daniel's threats cannot. "Let her go," he says, steady and unflinching. Daniel scoffs, throwing back accusations of Ethan being the family disgrace, the deserter who abandoned responsibility. But Ethan doesn't flinch. Instead, he steps closer, forcing Daniel to release his grip. His eyes lock on Haley's, not Daniel's, and the message is unmistakable. This isn't about him, it's about you. Ethan's words cut deeper than Daniel's cruelty. You think silence will save you? You think enduring will protect you? That's the same lie that destroyed Mom. The mention of their mother, her quiet suffering, her silent compliance hits Haley like a blow to the chest. Daniel, flustered, tries to twist the narrative, muttering about family loyalty and the disgrace Ethan brought on them. But Ethan won't let Haley retreat into the familiar script of submission. He reminds her of the cost of silence, of what they both lost when lies became the family's foundation. His intervention is more than protection. It's a demand for her to see, to wake up. In the pounding rain, Haley feels the pull of two opposing forces, Daniel's suffocating control and Ethan's uncompromising truth. The air between them crackles with the weight of choice. It's then, with the storm raging around them, that Ethan unleashes the truth he has carried for years, the secret that tore him away. His voice breaks, not with weakness, but with the rawness of memory. "I didn't leave because I gave up on you. I left because I found them. Dad's other family. A second home, a second daughter, living proof that everything we thought was ours was a lie." Haley freezes, the rain mingling with the tears she doesn't realize are falling. Ethan goes on, explaining how their father begged him to protect the illusion, to stay silent for the sake of appearances. Ethan couldn't. He walked away rather than become complicit. But Haley, so young then, so desperate to keep the pieces together, did what their father asked. She stayed silent. The revelation shatters her, because it's not only about the betrayal of their father, but the betrayal of herself. She chose silence, and in doing so, she lost Ethan for years. Now, standing between the two men who represent her past and her future, she feels the crushing weight of guilt, loyalty, and fear pressing down on her. Daniel insists Ethan is lying, twisting the story to drive a wedge between them. But deep down, Haley knows the truth. Ethan's eyes, his voice, the pain in his words are undeniable. For the first time, she sees her life for what it is, not a sanctuary, but a cycle. And the storm that rages outside is nothing compared to the one now. Breaking inside her dot, Daniel doesn't explode after the reception. He tightens his grip with quiet precision. At first, it's almost invisible, the kind of control that hides beneath the language of care. He insists Haley rest more, for her own good, and discourages her from attending gatherings with her friends, subtly casting doubt on their intentions. "They don't really understand you, Haley." They're jealous. One by one, her friendships begin to fade, calls unanswered, invitations withdrawn, as Daniel plants seeds of suspicion that grow into isolation. He takes over their finances under the guise of responsibility, slipping comments like, "You don't need to worry about money, I'll handle everything." What sounds like generosity is really ownership, and Haley finds herself asking for permission rather than making choices. Even her laughter feels monitored, as if joy itself must be curated for Daniel's approval. When Ethan reappears, Daniel's mask slips further. He bristles at every mention of Haley's brother, calling him a leech, a disruption, a man who abandoned his family. But beneath the insults lies fear of losing control. His manipulation grows sharper, gaslighting her into questioning her memory, her feelings, even her own instincts. "You're imagining things," he tells her when she pushes back. "I'm the only one who's ever truly been here for you." Slowly, Daniel spins a web of control so fine it feels impossible to untangle, and Haley, once so radiant, begins to shrink into the shadows of her own life. As if Daniel's grip weren't enough, Haley finds herself weighed down by her mother's quiet, persistent pressure. Her mother, still haunted by the scars of her husband's betrayal, clings to one mantra: keep the peace. "Marriage is about sacrifice, Haley," she whispers during one of their strained conversations, her eyes filled not with strength but with fear. To her mother, silence is safety, and the greatest threat is public shame, a repeat of the humiliation that once dismantled their family. Ethan, meanwhile, becomes the opposing voice, urging Haley to see what's unfolding. "This isn't love, Haley. This is control." It's the same story all over again. The tension between her mother's fear and Ethan's warnings pulls Haley apart. At night, the flashbacks return memories of childhood she once buried. She sees herself, a little girl hiding in the hallway, overhearing her father's lies, watching her mother's silence stretch like a prison wall around them. She remembers the weight of loyalty, the way she clung to family unity, even when it was poisoned, and how Ethan's departure felt like betrayal because he chose freedom over them. Now, she sees the truth with devastating clarity. She has become her mother. Every choice she makes, every silence she keeps, is a mirror of that childhood cycle. And Daniel, like her father, thrives on her compliance. For the first time, Haley questions not only Daniel's control, but her own complicity in repeating the very life she once swore she would escape. Yet in the midst of this storm, Haley and Ethan begin to rediscover the bond they thought was lost forever. Their conversations are tense, often sparking into arguments fueled by years of resentment. Haley lashes out, accusing Ethan of leaving her behind, of walking away when she needed him most. Ethan counters with his own pain, confessing the unbearable weight of carrying the truth about their father's second family, the loneliness of choosing honesty over belonging. Their clashes are raw, but beneath them lies something uncheckable: love. One night, after a particularly heated fight, Ethan finally admits what he's never told her. He always saw Haley as the stronger one. "You stayed," he says softly, not with criticism but awe. "I thought I was brave for leaving, but maybe you were braver for enduring." Haley, tears brimming, confesses her own hidden truth. She always envied Ethan's courage to walk away. "You lived your own life," she whispers. "I've only ever lived the one others chose for me." In that exchange, the distance between them collapses. For the first time in years, they see each other not as betrayer and abandoned, but as two survivors who chose different paths through the same storm. The bond rekindles not with perfection, but with honesty, the kind of honesty that makes Haley realize she isn't as alone as she thought. In Ethan's presence, she feels a glimmer of strength return, a whisper that perhaps her story doesn't have to end like their mother's. It's the first fragile spark of hope. Even as Daniel's shadow looms larger than ever, the charity gala is Daniel's stage, A glittering affair where every detail screams perfection, the polished speeches, the flawless orchestra, the carefully curated guest list. Haley drifts through the crowd like a ghost in sequins, smiling at donors, shaking hands, performing her role as the immaculate fiancée. Yet behind the polished facade, she feels the tightening coil of unease, a familiar sense that something is off. The truth comes crashing when she slips away to the balcony and overhears a hushed conversation, Daniel's low, intimate voice with another woman, a laugh too tender, a promise too rehearsed. Her chest tightens, memories of her father's whispered phone calls flooding back. It's not just infidelity, it's déjà vu, history repeating itself with brutal precision. When she confronts Daniel, it isn't in private. Fueled by years of silence, shame, and Ethan's steady presence, she chooses the stage she built. In the middle of the gala, lights gleaming and guests frozen in curiosity, Haley's voice cuts through the music. "You've been lying." Just like my father, the words shatter the air, drawing gasps and wide-eyed stares. Daniel, caught off guard, tries to regain control with his usual charm, but the mask slips too far. The gala, his showcase of power, becomes the setting of his exposure. But Daniel isn't a man who concedes. His charm curdles into venom as he leans close, voice low enough for her but sharp enough to sting. "If you walk away, I'll destroy you. I'll expose everything. Your father's filth, your family's shame, your silence." His words are a dagger, pressing into the very wound that has kept Haley captive all her life, the secret she carried, the silence she lived in, the image she protected at the cost of herself. For a moment, fear surges through her, raw and suffocating. She sees flashes of her mother bowing her head, enduring for the sake of appearances, and she feels the pull of that old cycle, to shrink, to obey, to let shame dictate her choices. Daniel's smirk grows, certain he has cornered her, that the leash of secrecy will yank her back into place. Guests murmur in confusion, tension thick in the air, while Ethan watches from the edge of the crowd, eyes locked on his sister. The threat is clear. If she leaves, her family's secrets become gossip, and she becomes the spectacle she's feared her entire life. Daniel's final blow is not his infidelity, but his weaponization of her silence. He thinks he's won, but Haley doesn't break. For the first time, she refuses to bow to shame. With Ethan stepping forward at her side, she turns not to Daniel, but to the crowd. Her voice shakes at first, but steadies as truth pours out like floodwaters breaking a dam. Yes, our father betrayed us. He lived 2 lives, and we carried that silence like chains. I stayed quiet because I thought endurance was strength. But silence only protected the men who hurt us. Daniel is no different. Gasps ripple through the room, the scandal igniting like wildfire. Daniel sputters, but the power has shifted. His threats are nothing compared to her truth. Haley doesn't just expose Daniel. She exposes the pattern that bound her family, the cycle of manipulation and secrecy that nearly consumed her. The whispers of shame transform into murmurs of shock, even respect, as she reclaims her voice. Ethan, standing beside her, doesn't speak for her. He simply bears witness, letting her take the stage that once belonged to Daniel. In that moment, Haley is no longer the dutiful daughter, the polished fiancée, or the silent victim. She is a woman who has chosen truth over appearances, freedom over fear. The scandal burns her reputation, but it liberates her soul. For the first time in her life, she breathes without chains. The fallout from the gala is swift and merciless. Daniel, once the darling of high society, watches his carefully constructed empire unravel. Sponsors withdraw from his ventures, whispers turn to headlines, and the man who thrived on control suddenly finds himself powerless in the court of public opinion. Haley, though battered by the scandal, walks through the fire with her head higher than it has ever been. For the first time, she is not hiding behind perfection. Instead, she exists in her raw truth, flawed, exposed, but free. In the quiet days that follow, her mother visits, her hands trembling as she confesses the words Haley has longed to hear. I wasn't strong, Haley. I was afraid. I thought silence would protect us, but it only protected him. Tears fall, not just of sorrow, but of release, as their mother apologizes for passing down chains disguised as survival. For years, Haley resented Ethan's departure and her mother's passivity, carrying the burden of their choices like her own. Now, standing together in honesty, they begin to shed the weight of silence. It doesn't erase the past, but it opens a door to healing. Haley makes the choice that once seemed impossible. She leaves Daniel before the marriage is ever truly sealed. No drawn-out explanations, no attempts to smooth the scandal, no clinging to the illusion of stability. She walks away because she finally understands that endurance without love is not strength, it's surrender. The absence of his shadow feels terrifying at first, but then liberating. Without Daniel controlling her finances, Haley learns to stand on her own. She opens her own bank account, draws up her own plans, and for the first time feels the strange, exhilarating thrill of independence. Therapy becomes her lifeline, a place where she unravels years of buried grief and unlearns the lies she once believed about herself. No longer defined by appearances or by her father's legacy, she begins shaping an identity rooted in authenticity. She takes a position at a community legal clinic, throwing herself into cases where women fight for freedom from controlling partners. Each client reminds her of who she once was and who she refuses to be again. Every story she helps rewrite feels like stitching a piece of her own soul back together. Her growth is not neat or easy, but it is hers and is real. For Ethan, the days after the gala bring their own reckoning. He realizes that running from the family's wreckage may have freed him from the cycle, but it also left his sister to fight alone. For years, he carried guilt as proof of his failure, using distance as armor. Now, for the first time, he chooses to stay. Instead of abandoning Haley to rebuild her life alone, he becomes her partner in healing, not as a protector dictating her choices, but as a brother who stands beside her. Their bond, once fractured by resentment, begins to mend in small but profound ways. Late-night conversations over coffee, silent car rides that feel like forgiveness, laughter that feels like recovery. Ethan admits that he no longer sees family ties as chains, but as connections worth fighting for, so long as they're built on truth. Haley, in turn, tells him the words she once couldn't. You didn't abandon me. I just wasn't ready to see why you left. Together, they learn to carry the past not as a weight, but as a reminder of what they've survived. Their mother, slowly, cautiously, joins them in that space of rebuilding, daring to break her own silence. The three of them, scarred but no longer shackled, begin to write a different kind of story, one where silence no longer defines them and fear no longer dictates their choices. For Haley especially, empowerment isn't a moment. It's a journey. And with Ethan at her side, she finally believes it's a journey she will never have to walk alone. Months later, the chaos has faded into memory. The headlines about Daniel's downfall are buried beneath newer scandals. The whispers about Haley's defiance softened into silence. She now lives in a small but bright apartment, not grand like the estate she almost tied herself to, but filled with something she never had before: peace. The sunlight filters through gauzy curtains, touching stacks of books, a plant that refuses to die, and a desk where she writes late into the night. On the table sits a small box, the last relic of the life she left behind. Her wedding ring, unworn, glitters coldly inside. For weeks, she couldn't bring herself to part with it, as if letting go meant acknowledging how close she came to being trapped forever. but today feels different. Haley slips the ring into a donation box, her hand steady. On top, she places a note in her neat handwriting. May this never be someone else's cage. It's not bitterness she feels as she seals the box, but release. The gesture is quiet, almost invisible, yet it carries the weight of her entire journey. The ring no longer defines her future. It becomes a symbol of survival, a reminder that the chains once wrapped around her no longer hold. Later that evening, Ethan stops by. He carries no grand gifts, no speeches, just a folded photograph that looks worn with age. Haley takes it carefully, recognizing it instantly. A picture of them as children, once torn in two during a fight years ago, now taped back together. The tape is visible, the creases permanent, but the faces, hers smiling shyly, his arms slung protectively over her shoulder, are whole again. We can't erase the past, Ethan says, his voice rough but steady. But we can choose what comes next. For a long moment, Haley stares at the photograph, her chest tightening. It isn't perfect, the lines are jagged, the scars visible, but that's what makes it real. She meets Ethan's gaze, and for the first time in years, there's no resentment, no distance, just the quiet recognition that they survived together, even if on different paths. She places the photograph on her desk, beside her journal, not hidden away, but displayed where she can see it every day. It's a reminder that love doesn't erase pain, but grows through it, binding people not in illusion, but in truth. In Ethan's small gesture, Haley sees a future where family no longer means silence and shame, but choice and honesty. That night, Haley writes in her journal, the pages filled with thoughts she once buried but now spills freely. Her final line for the evening is simple yet profound. The past tried to define me, but love, the kind that heals, not cages, is the one I choose now. She closes the journal, her hand lingering on the cover, and exhales. Later, she and Ethan step out into the city, the night air cool against their faces. They walk side by side down streets lit with neon and laughter, blending into the quiet hum of life moving forward. There are no grand gestures, no sweeping speeches, no need for perfection. Just the rhythm of their footsteps and the peace of knowing the truth no longer hides between them. Haley tilts her head back, watching the stars drowned by city lights, and smiles faintly. It's not the smile of a woman pretending, but of someone who has finally chosen herself. Ethan matches her stride, hands in his pockets, the silence between them no longer heavy but easy. In that closing image, there is no cage, no stage, no need to prove anything. Just a brother and sister, scarred yet whole, walking through the night with nothing but the quiet truth they reclaimed together. And for Haley, that truth is more radiant than any wedding gown, more lasting than any vow. It is freedom, and it is hers.